He was a man who quoted ancient Hindu scripture moments after unleashing the fire of a new god. A man who built a weapon to save the world, only to spend the rest of his life warning humanity against the monster he had created. This is not fiction. This is the story of the city that never officially existed, the thousands who lived there under a veil of total secrecy, and the terrible race against Nazi Germany to build a weapon that could, with a single blinding flash, end all wars, or end the world. This is the story of Los Alamos, and the troubled, brilliant, paradoxical man at its center, J. Robert Oppenheimer. The Letter and the Lion. The story of the atomic bomb does not begin with an explosion. It begins with a letter. It was the summer of 1939. On the drowsy, sun-drenched north shore of Long Island, a lion of physics, the most famous scientist on Earth, was enjoying a quiet sailing holiday. Albert Einstein, a Jewish refugee from the very terror now consuming Europe, had fled Nazi Germany and found sanctuary in America. He was a pacifist, a man who believed the universe operated on principles of profound harmony. But two fellow Hungarian physicists, Leo Szilárd and Eugene Wigner, had driven out from New York City to find him, their minds churning with a terrifying new possibility. They found Einstein at a rented cottage in Peconic, blissfully unaware of the latest catastrophic leap in nuclear physics. Szilárd, a man whose mind seemed to vibrate with nervous energy, laid out the news. In Berlin, just months earlier, German chemists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann had done the unthinkable. They had split the uranium atom. The discovery, called nuclear fission, had been confirmed by Lise Meitner, herself a refugee from the Nazis. The implications were not merely academic. When a uranium atom split, it didn't just break apart. It released a colossal amount of energy, and crucially, several extra neutrons. Those neutrons could, in theory, fly off and split other uranium atoms, which would release more energy and more neutrons, creating a cascade. A chain reaction. Einstein, sitting at a simple wooden table, grasped the concept almost immediately. "He never thought of that," he murmured, his German accent still thick. Szilárd pressed the point. This was not just a source of power. This was a bomb. A single bomb of inconceivable power, one that could vaporize an entire city. And the world's largest supply of uranium ore was not in America or Britain, but in the Belgian Congo, a colony dangerously vulnerable to German aggression. Worse, the Nazis had the world's best remaining physicists and engineers, and they had banned the export of uranium from Czechoslovakia, which they now controlled. The race, Szilárd insisted, had already begun, even if America didn't know it. They needed to warn the President of the United States. Einstein was hesitant. He was a theorist, not a military advisor. But the thought of Hitler's regime possessing a weapon that could hold the entire planet hostage was a nightmare beyond comprehension. He agreed. Szilárd, with help from his colleagues, drafted a letter. Einstein, the world's ultimate scientific authority, would sign it. The letter, dated August 2, 1939, was addressed to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It was cautiously worded, but its message was chilling. Quote, "May become possible to set up a nuclear chain reaction in a large mass of uranium by which vast amounts of power would be generated. This new phenomenon would also lead to the construction of bombs, and it is conceivable, though much less certain, that extremely powerful bombs of a new type may thus be constructed." End quote. The letter urged the government to secure uranium supplies and fund research. But getting this explosive document to the president was another challenge. They gave it to an economist and Roosevelt confidant, Alexander Sachs. For weeks, Sachs tried and failed to get a meeting, acutely aware that the letter in his briefcase represented the fate of the world. On September 1st, 1939, the world's anxieties crystallized. Adolf Hitler invaded Poland. The Second World War had begun. Finally, on October 11th, Sachs secured his meeting. He sat across from President Roosevelt in the Oval Office. He didn't just hand over the letter, he read a prepared summary aloud, emphasizing the threat. Roosevelt, weary from the news in Europe, was initially cautious. He said, "Alex, what you are after is to see that the Nazis don't blow us up." "Precisely," Sachs replied. The president pondered for a moment. Then he turned to his aide, General Edwin Pa Watson, and said the words that would ignite the largest, most secret, and most expensive scientific military endeavor in human history. "Pa," Roosevelt commanded, "this requires action." The Advisory Committee on Uranium was formed. It was a slow, bureaucratic start. The initial government grant for this world-changing research was a paltry $6,000, just enough to buy some graphite. The physicists fumed at the lack of urgency. For 2 years, the project drifted, a low-priority academic curiosity. Then, on December 7, 1941, everything changed. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor plunged a shocked and enraged America into the global inferno. The abstract fear of a Nazi superweapon suddenly became an immediate existential crisis. The time for academic curiosity was over. The time for action was now. The small uranium committee was about to morph into a behemoth. But a project of this scale needed more than just money. It needed a leader. It found two, a pair so diametrically opposed in temperament that their partnership seemed destined for failure. One was a career military engineer, Brigadier General Leslie Groves. He was gruff, overweight, pragmatic, and utterly ruthless in his pursuit of results. He had just finished building the Pentagon, the world's largest office building, on time and under budget. He hated academics, whom he found to be flaky, arrogant, and unreliable. The other was a man who seemed the very living embodiment of everything Groves detested. He was a theoretical physicist from Berkeley, a man of ethereal intellect and skeletal thinness. He was famously eccentric, a chain smoker who spoke in cryptic riddles, loved horseback riding in the New Mexico desert, and read poetry in its original Sanskrit. He was politically suspect, with a web of communist-affiliated friends, a tormented brother, and a volatile wife. He had almost no administrative experience. His name was J. Robert Oppenheimer. Groves, a man who trusted his gut, was given the file on Oppenheimer. On paper, he was the worst possible choice to lead a top-secret weapons program. But when they met, Groves saw something others had missed. Beneath the poetry and the leftist chatter, Groves saw a genius with a driving, overweening ambition. He saw an American patriot who understood, perhaps better than anyone, exactly what was at stake. In a decision that defied all military logic, Groves made Oppenheimer the scientific director of the new secret laboratory. Now, they just needed a place to build it. Oppenheimer, who had a deep, almost spiritual love for the American Southwest, knew just the place. It was a remote, isolated mesa in New Mexico, the site of a defunct boys' ranch school. It was a place of stark, haunting beauty, surrounded by canyons and mountains, accessible by only one winding, treacherous road. It was perfect. It was defensible. It was secret. The U.S. government seized the land. They began building a city that would not appear on any map. It would have no name, only a post office box. P.O. Box 1663, Santa Fe. They called the project the Manhattan Engineer District, a deliberately boring name to deflect curiosity. But the men and women who were about to be sent there, their pasts erased and their futures uncertain, would come to know it by another name: Los Alamos, the Hill. Oppenheimer, the intellectual prophet, and Groves, the pragmatic builder, were about to play a Promethean gamble. They were going to gather the greatest minds on the planet in the middle of nowhere and try to build the sun.